Ohayou gozaimasu. Welcome everybody. My name is Shoko Arakawa. I'm a Japan practice leader of Thornton Australia. Japanese investors are known for their long-term views. Japan as a nation continues to stay calm during the pandemic, but have there been any drastic changes in their investment strategies? Today, we have two fantastic Japanese experts for you. The first expert is Ishihara, who is the managing director of Sumitomo Coal Australia. He's also an executive director of the Mineral Resources and Energy Division of Sumitomo Australia, responsible for all the resources business, including non-ferrous metal, oil, energy, coal, and iron ore. Sam has over 35 years of experience in the industry, and he's been in Australia for about 7 years in total. And lastly, Sam is the chair of the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Brisbane, JCCIB. Our second expert is Fumi Uyama, who is the managing director of Idemitsu Australia Resources, a wholly owned subsidiary of Idemitsu Kozan. Fumi is an exploration geochemist and geologist who looked after Idemitsu's major projects in Japan, Canada, Norway, and now in Australia. Fumi has over 35 years of experience in the sector, and he is a vice chair of the JCCIB. You can find their profiles on the website or LinkedIn. Sam and Fumi, welcome. Both of you wear multiple hats. You are the leaders of the company, representatives of the Japanese business community, and experts who have been deeply involved in the industry for over 35 years. But today, I'd like you to wear the expert's hat to share your views. And I have rather interesting 3 questions for you today. So question 1, the global pandemic. We are facing a situation that no one has ever experienced before. And yes, Japanese investors have a long-term view, and you have been part of it too. You are also in a unique position to be both supply and demand for the resources. Now, question is, have there been any shift or adjustments made to this long-term view on either demand or supply side of the business? Sam?
Yes, I think the tendency to pursue the most competitive assets from the perspective of quality as well as cost has been universal and will be universal and will not change. But I think since the corona crisis began, we've seen some accelerations of changes in some areas. Australia inherently has the most competitive resources, assets, and that continues with the advantage. In addition to this, I think Australia has demonstrated the brilliant quality of risk management during the pandemic so far. Almost there has been no infection at every mine site in this country. And this is not only efforts of individual resource company, but also as a result of the collaboration among different stakeholders, such as state, federal governments, and industries. And I congratulate this result, and this even increased the value of the industry as a whole in this country.
That's very reassuring to hear that Australia continues to be an attractive investment destination to Japanese investors. Fumi, can you add on to it?
Thank you, Shoko. I think the effect of COVID-19 depends on the business type, I think. So, for example, business infrastructure or business type may change significantly. As you may remember that in 2001, when 9/11 happened, I was involved in the project in Canada at that time, and any flights are not available in North America, and we use a telephone conference very frequently instead of traveling. And 2010, when a volcano erupted in Iceland, that is also the video conference was increased to use. And now, 10 years later now, we have a COVID problem. So now working from home has made rapid progress. So I think there are some certain changes in the business infrastructure. On the other hand, energy and resource investment must be seen from a long-term perspective. Also, we need to see as a situation as a supplier point of view. We supply energy resources that are a basis of human life. The problem of COVID-19 has only just begun this year, and we still can't see the picture at the end. I don't think it's necessary to reassess and change attitude of resource and energy in such situation. Having said that, I agree with some that Australia's measure against COVID-19 are doing very well. So country risk is very important for investment. And in this respect, the current situation is evidence of Australia's low country risk. So Australia's response to COVID-19 added value to the investment in Australia. That is my view.
That's great. There are no drastic changes in the investor's mind, and it's very interesting to hear about the history and how the sector responded, building this resilience to adapting to this kind of circumstances. Moving on to question 2, and let's focus on the transformation. We all know that resources are scarce, and compared to 30 years ago, there are not many mines out there that are relatively easy to mine and operate. And on top of that, this pandemic appears to accelerate the urge to transform the industry, thinking about the end game and looking into the future, say 2050 or 30 years from now. So the question is, how quickly do you think this industry can transform, and what would be the challenges to make it happen? Sam?
Yes, the destiny of this industry is that as the current operations continue, we always deplete the deposit. So we always have to develop the new mines or resources projects in order to keep the supply. But inherently, new reserve and deposit are located in a much more remote area, and there the ore body is much more complex to process. So supplyability will be much more difficult to keep the current level or even increase. On the other hand, world population currently 5 billion people, but it is expected to increase to 10 billion people by 2050. So in order to keep the demand, current way of business is not sustainable. This pandemic, on the other hand, in a short run, could be bad for the public health and the economy, but on the long term, I think it could be blessing in disguise. That means it will encourage people to think post-corona, and in other words, next normal. It has been always the case that the obstacle for change is people's mind. But this pandemic effectively forced people to think out of the box. As a result, people will focus more on the sustainability issue. And this word, sustainability, not only means environment, but also how to fundamentally meet the demand in the long run with ever-expanding human society. The fundamental change in ways to operate to gain drastic efficiency or technology to reduce the consumptions are necessary. I think either way, innovations are the key.
I see. Blessing in disguise. Sam, I just couldn't say it better. And the challenges are certainly the people's mindset and the way we think and live. Humi, what about you?
I think in my sense, the resources are not disappeared, but the question is whether it is economical. So oil is very typical. If you spend more money, the amount of oil can be recovered will increase. So other resources also similar. So after all, I think that is a matter of economic principles and technological innovation. So with the innovation and improvement resources are still there. With regard to transition, I think it is difficult to predict future and change the industry with certain assumptions. I think change is something that needed to happen and depends on the whether such undoubted fact is there. Personally, I don't think change will occur as often as we think or as soon as we think. It may be not a good example, but for power generation technologies, solar power is increasing, but still main power generation is by steam. So I think it is important not to further about. That is my opinion.
Right, so mining is certainly the essential business, and that's why it will move along with our lives. So the transformation may be rather slow, yet it is an excellent opportunity to adjust our thinking process fundamentally, isn't it? Okay, last question from me is about the value-adding activities. So to address these challenges to transform the sector, what would be the examples of the value-adding activities that Japanese companies have initiated? Sam?
Yes, it doesn't necessarily mean the value addition, but there are three trends which I think Japanese industry as a whole can contribute in this area. And one is acceleration of automation. As some people may know, Japan is the largest manufacturer of the robotics in the world. In terms of the number of robotics producing per year. And in the soft area, we are rapidly catching up in the areas like artificial intelligence. And secondly, energy conservation. Japan is one of the leading nations in energy conservation. If you go to Tokyo, you notice that there are lots of devices and systems working to make sure that the energy consumption is minimized. And that effectively increased the efficiency of operation as well as reduce the generation of greenhouse gas. Japan can also contribute as the promoter of new technologies by investment in high-tech startups for these two areas as well. A third point is restructuring of supply chain. Currently, the entire supply chain is disturbed by the COVID-19. So why do we only talk about upstream of the resources business? Probably we have to think holistically as a supply chain restructuring. People talk about restructuring supply chain by shifting manufacturing facilities from overseas to domestic markets in various countries. Australia, on the other hand, has resources such as natural gas in Western Australia or Queensland. This is one example. And there will be a question such as why not build manufacturing facilities, bring the manufacturing facilities from overseas near natural gas supply sources rather than build a transcontinental west to east pipeline. Western Australia or Queensland have quite good infrastructure. So as you know, manufacturing is Japan's core competence. And in these areas, in various ways, we can contribute holistically, I think.
That's great, Sam. To conclude this question, Fumi, can you please add to it?
Yes, I think I don't think kind of a rapid big change is happened, but it doesn't mean that we can waste it. And Japan is good at improving efficiency, so we can make that kind of contribution in such area. For example, our company, Idemitsu, is a coal and environment research laboratory in Japan, does some research to efficient use of coal and fuels. and advise its customers, and also to make a consultation to our mines in Australia for quality control such. And since natural resources are limited in Japan, we must use the best way both environmentally and efficiently. We can contribute over a whole supply chain. And one thing that I'm not directly responding to your question, Shoko, but from my limited experience in North America and also Europe, I think it's easier for Japanese to get along with Australians. That is about also the value creation by working together. Idemitsu has been in Australia for 40 years, and Idemitsu did not have competence of mining. So current establishment here and operation is done by Australians. However, I believe interaction with Japanese culture has created some value. And also I'm hoping it will be continued. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Humi. So it's not only the funding, money, but also it's the soft skills and culture that Japanese companies have been mindful of, such as no waste and conservation. And that holistic approach altogether is certainly adding value. So my takeaway is next normal, which is not new normal because everything is changing so rapidly. Nothing is new anymore. And we are challenged to adapt to ever evolving circumstances. Yet with patience, resilience, and continuous effort, we can look into the end game and to the future. I thank Sam and Humi for sharing their expertise. Thank you. And then to you for joining us today. If you have any questions or comments, please contact us directly. And then we thank you to Mine and Money Online Connect for the opportunities to share the views. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.